everyone. So I'm going to the end of first year now, which seems a little bit strange, especially considering we've not really been into the office as much because of the pandemic and everything. It still feels I still feel very much like a newbie, and I don't know my way around things, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, I wanted to do a video on kind of my experience of what this year's been. What I liked and what I didn't like, basically. This is obviously not going to be the same as a lot of people. I think especially the bits about my experience with uni, just because I'm enjoying it, but I have come from being in uni for so long now that I just feel like I need a bit of a break. But yeah, we'll get on to that in a little bit. So just a quick overview of what I did this year. So we started in September. There was a few weeks of kind of induction and getting used to the department and doing all the induction training modules, reading the SOPs that we needed to read, etc. A little bit of time that I kind of wish I'd spent on doing some of the theory for professional practice modules. So if you too have a few weeks before uni starts, I definitely would recommend at least doing a little bit of the reading for it. And then we had uni block in October, so that was the whole of October, and it was all done online. We would have gone up to Manchester otherwise. Each uni is kind of different depending on what you're specialising in. So yeah, we would have gone up to Manchester, but obviously it was all done online. So we did a week of bioinformatics, a week of genetics, a week of repro, and 3 days or so of genetic counselling. And then we had more genetic counselling later in the year, because they'd hoped that we were going to be able to do it face to face, but we ended up doing it virtually again. And then after that, me and Christina went into our genetics rotation. So that was from November to kind of January time, with Christmas in the middle. And it was nice to have a bit of a break, because between January of genetics finishing and bioinformatics starting in February time, we had a couple of exams. I think it was 2. And it was nice to just have a little pause after that rotation. It was the first rotation, so just catching up on everything, getting used to things, and then being able to revise for the exams. But I know not every training centre does that, so it'll depend on kind of your training plan. And then, as I said, we did bioinformatics, so that started in February and went through until April, so about 8 weeks of that. Which is really good. It was still within our genetics department in Birmingham, and we kind of focused on the genetics-y element of bioinformatics. We did do some of the bioinformatics as well, but kind of focused on the stuff that we'll be using in second and third, and then third year, and then when we finish to become clinical scientists. So that was until April, and then April to July-ish we were doing genetic counselling. So I really enjoyed that. We were able to kind of go in a couple of days each week. I had 2 weeks with one of my trainers, 2 weeks with another, 2 weeks with the first one, 2 weeks with the second one, and it kind of rotated like that, which was really nice because A, they didn't get sick of me, and B, there was a little bit of variation in what I was seeing, what kind of clinics I was seeing and things. And then I was really lucky because one of my trainers who I was meant to be with for one of my blocks gave me 10 days or so to revise for the summer exams, so that was great, and I was very grateful. And then counselling finished and we started in repro, which is where I am now. So that started in July time and will go through to September. So I finish on the 3rd of September in repro. But we're expected to do a few weeks of actually seeing stuff. It's 8 weeks in total, 2 or 3 weeks of actually seeing stuff, and the rest of the time kind of completing the competencies, writing things up, completing the assessments, etc. Because it's quite a small department, so there's not loads of people able to focus on us directly, which is fine because they need to be doing service work. And then there's also quite small space in the lab, so we don't want to be there taking up room when people that could actually be doing their job could be in that room. And then throughout the year there's been uni assignments, exams, conferences, webinars, workshops, etc. So and this. I started this in January time, I think. So that's been part of this half of the year too, and will continue hopefully for quite a long time. So that's kind of the overview before I delve into what I really enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy so much. I'm not going to go into everything because it would just be a really long video, but I kind of picked out a few of my highlights and a few of my lowlights to go through. Cool, so I enjoyed the non-geneticsy rotations quite a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought that I'd find them interesting, but I've really enjoyed them a lot more than I expected, especially the counselling one, because we were able to go in and we were able to kind of see patients and speak with them and just kind of see the background to what we're doing in lab genetics, see it transfer over to actual patients. RePro is a patient-facing specialism as well, obviously, but I feel like counselling just related more to what I'm completely interested in, so I enjoyed it a little bit more. Not that I'm not enjoying RePro, it's really good. But it was quite a lot out of my comfort zone, I think, because part of the reason I like genetics is because it's not a patient-facing specialism and you're looking at the results and troubleshooting, problem solving to get to a result at the end. I have nervous laughter, nervous smiles, which aren't great if you're talking to patients when they're going through a really difficult time. So I was a bit worried about that when I started the rotation, but it was fine. And my trainers were really good and just kind of letting me adjust and take things at my own pace, but also encouraging me to get stuck in, because we could have done some of the competencies of talk to a patient and establish their agenda. So they did say at the start that we could do that in a virtual setting, but I'm really glad that I did it with an actual patient, because it just meant I feel like you get more of an insight into what they do as their job and kind of how much you can affect the patient's experience. I wouldn't have taken family histories, I wouldn't have phoned patients to talk about how their appointment had gone if I hadn't been in this rotation. Although RePro is patient facing, I've not spoken to patients apart from introducing myself if I'm gonna observe and asking if that's okay. Whereas in counselling I was able to get quite stuck in. So I think that was one of my favourite rotations outside of genetics. I really enjoyed genetics, obviously, because it's my home department, and I definitely picked the right choice for me. I like that problem solving aspect of it. I don't like genetic diseases, but I kind of do, because I find them really interesting, and we're at such a big lab and we see some really cool things coming through, but counselling really helped me kind of take a step back and look at the whole picture and see patient side of it as well. Another highlight for me was the team that I fell into. So Birmingham's quite a big lab. I think it might be the biggest in the country, and we serve a really big population as part of our laboratory hub with Oxford and Wessex as well. And just despite it being such a big department, everyone's really, really friendly and has welcomed us in and because they're a really established training centre for SCPs, everyone kind of knows who we are and what we're doing. Not who we are by name and everything, but who we are, like what our role is. And you don't have to spend time kind of explaining, like, I'm a trainee and I'm observing and I have competencies that someone will need to sign off. They're really good at just getting things sorted, and I like being organised, so being in a place that's got like quite stringent organisation works quite well with me. And yeah, another thing that I really enjoyed was starting this, because I would have never done this a few years ago. I'd have been too like nervous and anxious, but I kind of spotted that there was a need for it when I was applying, and so it still took me, what was it, September, October, November, December, January, 5 months to actually like find the confidence to do it. But I'm so glad that I did, because it's been really interesting as well, hearing about the other specialisms and thinking about like where we'd feed into them and they'd feed into us and things, and hopefully it's been useful for people. And it's been a really nice way of meeting trainees this year outside of genetics, cancer genetics, bioinformatics, the counselling trainees in Birmingham, and then Nicole. It's been a nice way to kind of put feelers out and try to find friends, because we weren't able to go to uni and things, so that side of things was really nice, especially if we need to go to uni next year, like, and you're trying to find people to stay with. It's just a nice way to connect, and it's so nice like when people have applied and then I've kind of helped them with their application or whatever, and then they get a place or they do really well and they get shortlisted or whatever. It's just nice hearing those stories too. But yeah, it's completely out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't have done this a couple of years ago, so I think that's something that the SCP has really given me. Like, I've become a lot more confident this year than I was before, and I'm more confident talking to people that I don't know, which you definitely have to do. Because yeah, you just get shown to this big team or whatever, and you need to just be comfortable and like explaining who you are and things. I really enjoyed Reap Pro as well. I think my favourite day of the SCP so far has been in Reap Pro, when I like helped on the theatre side when they were doing surgical sperm retrieval, so I did the syringe. It's not a massive part, but I still feel like I helped, and it was nice just getting involved, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to of like year 2 and year 3, is just becoming more involved and more of like a substantial member of the team rather than just kind of floating and observing lots of different things, which has also been good. But yeah, I think that was my favourite day so far, and it's a small team but they do a lot. And so it's nice just to be around kind of like hustle and bustle as well. So yeah, overall it's been a really good year, and I've learnt a lot, and I have really enjoyed, like, I've definitely enjoyed the year. There have been some things that have been little niggles, but overall it's been fab and I've really enjoyed it. So good luck to all the other SCPs that are starting next year, or this year in September, in like a couple of weeks' time. I think you're going to have a fab time, hopefully, and yeah, just try to reach out to other trainees, either in your specialism or outside of it. It's nice to know people outside of what you're doing, because they can relate to you with like competencies and assessments and things, but it's not like comparison all the time, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's one of my big tips, is make friends. So moving on to the things that I didn't like as much. I didn't hate them. I don't think I've hated anything this year, which is nice, but it's definitely things that I have been a bit like disappointed by or just not enjoyed as much. And the main one is uni, as I mentioned slightly at the beginning. I think the people at uni, like the staff and everything, really want to help and really do care about the course and what you're doing and things like that. But there's just like little things that have just made me a bit like irritated over the year, I guess. I understand that moving to virtual learning is a big ask, but it wasn't like when we were first introduced to the pandemic. I was still at uni when the pandemic first happened, and I think for a lot of it, the kind of organisation from my previous degree when the pandemic first happened was potentially better than the organisation of this current degree, like 6 months on or whatever, which is a bit disappointing because they have had time to iron it out and get things working. Yeah, so that's quite a big niggle I had with this year. I did enjoy the content though, especially the genetics content and the counselling content, unsurprisingly. Bioinformatics was really difficult, but I'm glad that I did it. And it definitely helped when I came to the rotation, just to have a little bit of background knowledge. But yeah, don't worry if you find it hard. Make sure you've gone through the pre-work before, and so just before that week of teaching, I'd had a seizure, so my memory was gone, and I found it really difficult the first few days to just catch up and know where I was, and the tools I'd completely forgotten how to use. So maybe just write. What I ended up doing for the assignment was going through and just writing what the tools were used for, name of the tools, what the tools were used for, and the website link, because some of the tools were just really hard to find. It was probably just me, so that I could quickly find what I needed to. But yeah, the genetics and the counselling content I found really interesting. Mainly, I think, because that's what I'm interested in anyway, and yeah, it was kind of what I'd gotten into the STP to do. But I know other people that were not from genetics that found it a little bit content heavy and some of it a bit dry. So I think it just depends where your interests are, really. I'm sure it's the same for everyone. I wasn't a big fan of the repro teaching. I think, I don't know how to word this. It was quite dense, I think. There was a lot of stuff in it. It was quite dense, and some of the lectures explained things in one way, and then another one of the lectures would contradict that slightly. So I found it really hard to follow it along and understand what was the right one and what I needed to learn for the exam. And honestly, it just baffled me. The way that they structured the teaching was just really confusing. I didn't quite understand it. And yeah, there was a lot of content to revise for the exam, and the exam ended up not being as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I was literally in tears a few days before the exam, trying to shove content about the bipotential gonad into my brain that wouldn't go in, partly because it was written in different ways in different lectures and I didn't know what was the right one, and Nicole was there to smooth things out and explain to me, but I can't tell you the development of it now, so it was committed to quite short-term memory, but it got me through it. But yeah, just the contradictions and things not being included in slides irritated me quite a lot. I understand that it's so that people kind of say that the slides aren't too text heavy and that people go and listen to the lectures and things like that, but I like to just kind of see things as well as hear them, and that's how my brain learns things, and then I can write them out. And I think especially for some people that are maybe hard of hearing, being able to see it written would have been really important. So not quite sure. Even just as like a transcript, alongside the lecture, you can get things that automatically transcript the words for you. That was another thing that I wasn't a big fan of. And just the kind of, in the exam as well, there were spelling mistakes, there were repeated questions, there were spelling mistakes in the answers too, so you had to kind of psychoanalyse whether the person who had written the question didn't notice it or didn't proofread it or didn't check it, and that was the actual correct answer, or whether they were like, let's put spelling mistake in, so like none of these are the right answers and you have to click none of the above. And that really irritated me. Like, that's not testing our learning, that's just testing how well we can guess. That's not fair. So that actually did make me quite angry, but we got over it. And the exam just felt quite like shoved together quite quickly. But we did feedback about the exam to the uni, so hopefully for next year it won't be as just slapdash as it felt this year. Fingers crossed. And I think the exams as well, the exam results we've still not had ratified. The feedback for the professional practice essay was quite short and brief, and I just think for the amount of effort we go to for the course, they could have put in a bit more effort on their side as well for getting things back to us on time and getting feedback, like useful feedback, rather than just like good or whatever, or needs more and things. And considering we're told to be organised, like really organised from the off, have everything hammered out to just like a high standard, I felt it was a bit, what's the word? It was just a bit unfair that they didn't have that same level of organisation on their side as well. Anyway, that was, I think, my biggest gripe with this year. But as I said, the staff were really good, so I think it is just like probably a lot of people working towards one course that are all working from home, and like they're doing things via email or via calls, and things are just getting mixed up, but hopefully it'll be better for next year. And then another thing that I didn't really like, or like didn't like as much, but can't really be helped, is the effect that the pandemic had. So I wish we could have gone in more, especially for genetics in my case. Genetic counselling we went in a fair amount as well, so that was good. And I understand why we couldn't. It's not like they should have let us come in anyway. No, because we weren't like contributing to the service work. So you needed the team that actually could do that and taking up the social distancing space. But I kind of wish, because of that and because things have got a little bit better now, maybe like a week of the end of 2 of the rotations could have been taken off of those rotations almost and been put in place so that we could go and see certain things and see certain processes that we've watched, or see like sample pathway. I think that would have been really beneficial, because I still don't have a great idea in my head of like how things move through. I understand the pathway from start to finish, but I don't understand it for our lab, and it would have just been cool to see some of the processes and the tests that are done before we start next year, especially because for counselling and hopefully for repro I'm gonna have a week or so at the end where I finish the competencies, finish the assessments, and I did for counselling just spend it on professional practice, and then I went on holiday. But it would have been nice to potentially use that week more fruitfully, I guess. But I understand why they couldn't, and that's fine. And then personally, I guess it's been quite a difficult year, just like health-wise. I've had to make some adjustments to the way that I work, but also the way that I live, and that's been quite difficult to just like come to terms with, and put into place in some cases. And I have found it difficult to then, when I have to take time off work, when I come back, I feel like I need to be working harder to make up for the time that I lost. And I'm getting better at coming like over that hill, I guess, but it's definitely something that I still need to work on. And work have been really good. They've all been really supportive. And I'm really grateful for that, because it makes me feel less like I should blame myself if other people are like supporting me in making those changes. And some of them are just small ones, like I adjust my working hours, so I walk in and back with Nicole, just like as a little bit of safety. But then other ones are like slightly bigger and just need a bit more planning, so it's nice to feel supported. And so off the back of that, one tip that I have is, and this is for like everyone, not just people with disabilities or long-term health conditions, it's for everyone. When you start, I think at our induction event, it was hammered out in all the talks that you should be saying yes to every opportunity, and you should be signing up to do things, and you should be putting yourself forward to like do different things. And yeah, absolutely, if you want to and you have the time and physical and emotional and mental time to do it, absolutely go ahead for it. But I don't think saying yes to every opportunity is like a good thing to recommend, because like don't do it if it's going to affect your health. And that doesn't just include like making you a bit sick or whatever. If it impacts on your eating or your sleeping or your mental health or your stress levels, or if because you do this one thing you then have to work in the evening to catch up on something else, just say no. Like, it's not fair of them to expect you to jump at every opportunity. No one can do that. No one can say yes to everything. I think it like contributes to just some of the like overwhelm that trainees talk about. I think every trainee event that I joined said that it was a really overwhelming program, and it's like, well, there's things that we can do to make it less overwhelming, including like saying it's fine to take breaks, and schedule them into your day. Like, don't spend your lunch break working, go and take a proper lunch break away from your desk, etc. Like, you don't have to say yes to everything. That's just my gong that I'm gonna bang forever. Others don't know what you're doing in your training, as well as like the other work that you have to do with like competencies and things like that, and service work in some areas, and then also in your personal life. So be confident in saying no. Don't feel like you have to explain yourself. Say no politely, but be supportive of yourself. And if you're not being supportive, then reach out to other people, and find someone that will like back your corner as well. So that's my main tip, I think. I'm just trying to think about if I've forgotten anything else, which I probably have. No. So I'm really grateful that I've started Time for Tea, just because it's really helped me like push myself out of my comfort zone, like make new friends, make new friends, and just see another side of the programme and the NHS, because I didn't know that some of these roles existed, as you can tell from all the videos, because I'm like, I don't know what you do. But I also had to take like a little bit of a step back from it occasionally, like during exam times or when I wasn't well, and it's alright to say no to things that you've set up yourself. So just kind of give yourself that space as well. And if anyone wants to message me or whatever about anything, then please do. I can try to help. I won't say that I'll have all the answers, but I can at least give some advice, I guess. But yeah, so those were like my highlights and lowlights so far. I think I'll probably do one at the end of second and third year as well, because I just quite like looking back at what I've gotten up to. And yeah, good luck if you're starting, good luck if you're applying, good luck if you're just not applying to either, but good luck in what you're doing otherwise. And yeah, see you next time.